Day in New York City. Pleasure to be here. Let me introduce who's with us today. Let's start with on my left, Ms. Molly Riley, Assistant Secretary for Resiliency and Economic Development. She works in the Office of the Governor. To my right, Kelly Cummings, who is the Director of State Operations, Office of the Governor. To Kelly's right, Dr. Howard Zucker, our great Commissioner of Health. It is a coincidence that Kelly and Molly happen to have the same attire today. I believe it's a coincidence. I know it's not. It is a coincidence. It's not like any government regulation. Okay, let's take a look at where we are today. COVID update overall on the numbers. Today, 3.5% positivity. 71 New Yorkers lost their lives still to COVID. We have made tremendous progress, but anyone who says it's over, they're wrong. 71 people passed away. Statewide hospitalizations are down 40, 4,600. ICU down 7,918. Intubations 596. This is where we look like on the positivity curve. Remember, we peaked post-holiday surge. And we have come way down from there. As a matter of fact, we are lower now than before the holiday surge, right? So we were stable. We went up for the holidays, and we've now come down to a lower level than we were before the holidays themselves. You look at the hospitalization rate across the state, it's fairly constant. Long Island, New York City, but fairly constant. The positivity rate, Long Island and Hudson Valley. Long Island has been had a high positivity rate for a period of time now, and so has the Hudson Valley. This makes the point again. It is up to us. It's up to a community's behavior. Why do you have the Southern Tier at 0.6 and Long Island at 4.3? Same state, same weather, same climate, same basic demographics. Southern Tier 4.6, Central New York 0.9, Mid-Hudson right next door 4.7. It is the action and the behavior of that community. In New York City, 4.5% in the Bronx. That's actually good. The Bronx was highest for a while. Queens is now 4.8. Brooklyn is 4.3. Staten Island 4.75. That's creeping up. Manhattan again 2.6. Makes the point again. It is the behavior of the community. It's how people act. It's a virus. Depending on our behavior is how the virus spreads. Vaccines are everything. This is the way we beat this situation. This is the way we turn the page. This is the way we end this chapter. But we have to do it. And the vaccination process is much harder and much more complicated than anyone, I think, fully appreciates. It's a relatively simple process, but the volume is so large that it's massive. We did another call yesterday as I'm head of the National Governors Association with the White House. The White House is working very hard to acquire more vaccination, more Pfizer, more Moderna, more Johnson & Johnson. We are now subject to how much vaccine they can acquire. We have more distribution capacity than we have supply. It's a supply problem right now. But they've made dramatic increases on the supply. They are promising more dramatic increases on the supply, and will then have the distribution network to do it. Right now, we did about 8 million shots in arms. Just for relative purposes, we have about 15 million eligible New Yorkers. We've done about 8 million shots in arms. 5 million, at least one dose. 2 million, close to 3 million fully vaccinated. The main focus is vaccinate, vaccinate, vaccinate. This is a logistical nightmare. Government has never operationalized a task this large. This is dealing with literally thousands of providers all across the state who have to get the vaccine delivered, who have to know guidelines, safety checks, etc. So it's a massive undertaking. April, May, June will be, the focus will be vaccination, vaccination, vaccination. The government side is operational, organizational. The citizen side is you have to come and get it. You have to come and get it. We have to talk our way through this distrust, etc. But that's what April, May, June are going to be about. We're also focusing on the equity in vaccinations. The vaccination rate among the black community is still lagging. The vaccination rate among the Hispanic community is still lagging. We pointed this out very early on, and we're working very hard to deal with that equity, but that's going to be an ongoing issue. And while we're vaccinating, because these are complicated times, at the same time, we have to be doing an aggressive rebuilding of New York. COVID is going to decline. Knock Formica COVID continues to decline. More people vaccinated, we get it under control. Okay, now you have to bring New York back. New York is not going to self-remedy. The economy is not going to come back on its own. It doesn't automatically inflate. It is going to be dependent on what we do. We have to rebuild New York. We have to stimulate the economy. The public sector has to stimulate the private sector. And it is going to be a function of how good we are at doing that. We have to rebuild New York comprehensively, holistically. Physically, we have to rebuild New York. Economically, we have to rebuild New York. We have people who have been out of jobs, who haven't had funding, who are in debt. Socially, we have to rebuild New York. We have to reconnect with people. Organizationally, we have to reconnect. So this rebuilding is on many ways on an existential level. This is something that we have never done before. We had a taste of it post 9/11, where we were traumatized, but nothing like this trauma in many ways. You have school children out of school for a year. What does that mean? You have people isolated. Dr. Zucker and I were talking about it this morning. The mental health issues that go with this, the trauma issues that go with this. But what is life about? You go through situations in life. You go through difficult situations in life. Things happen. Health problems happen. Family problems happen. Things happen. The question is, do you weather it, do you learn, and do you grow from it? And that's going to be our question with COVID. Now, disasters happen. I worked in the federal government before the state. I worked on federal disasters all across the nation, all across the world. Disasters happen. Floods happen. 9/11 happened. But you should learn from it when it happens. Disaster preparedness. It's basically a new, relatively new field for government. We talked about it for a long time, but until we've really had these disasters, we didn't appreciate it. We had Superstorm Sandy. Who ever heard of a superstorm? Who ever heard of flooding downtown Manhattan and flooding Queens and flooding Long Island and the Hudson flooding all the way into the Hudson Valley? Nobody ever heard of that before. We went through it. We learned from it. We are different because of it. Driving in today, went through the Queens Midtown Tunnel. Those two large brass doors made by a submarine company so that you close the doors, you seal the tunnel so it can't fill with water. Who ever heard of worrying about filling the tunnel with water? Nobody, until after Superstorm Sandy. Pumping stations all across the MTA now to pump out subway systems. Coverings for every subway opening now. Long Island building the electric grid above ground so when you have a flood you don't short out all the transformers. This is all post-Sandy world. Post 9/11 is a different world. From a security point of view, we changed dramatically. To this day, it's been so long now you take it for granted, but there's an increased security presence everywhere. At airports, in front of public buildings, there are barricades, there are more police, more security forces. That's all post 9/11 learning the lesson. We have to learn the lesson post-COVID. And in truth, this nation should have learned this public health lesson way before COVID, because we had warnings after warnings. But at least now, let's learn the lesson post-COVID. Because, and I hate to say this, there will be a next time. Anyone who says with COVID, well, this is one and done, this is one in a lifetime. No, my friends, this is not one and done. This is not one in a lifetime. And this was in many ways predictable, because we had seen many warning signs before, which I'll mention in a moment. But it will happen again. And just look at the past 20 or so years. 1997, we had the avian flu. SARS, 2002, a coronavirus. COVID was not the first coronavirus. SARS was a coronavirus 20 years ago. Swine flu, 2009. MERS, 2012, a coronavirus. Ebola, 2014. Zika, 2016. Dengue, 2019. Every few years, we have had a warning. And what happened? We didn't really make the changes and the remedies that we needed to put in place. And then COVID hits 2020 and everybody says, oh, my gosh, what a surprise. No. Warning, 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 warning. You do nothing to prepare. Now you have a real crisis with COVID-19. Let's not make the same mistake twice. Let's make the lesson, the changes to our public health emergency management system. We need an emergency management public health capacity that is much more sophisticated and operational than it is today. When we talk about emergency management now, we talk about it in terms of natural disasters. We talk about it in terms of floods, etc. We talk about it in terms of security needs. We have to get serious about a public health emergency management plan. Look at all the things we had to scramble to do and do on the fly here in New York. An emergency medical staff to come in because we needed more nurses and doctors. We had to have the hospitals work as a system so we could balance patient load. That we had to design on the fly. We didn't have enough PPE. We didn't have enough masks and gowns. We didn't have enough manufacturing capacity for PPE. We didn't have enough testing capacity. We didn't have enough Q-tips for testing capacity. We didn't have enough quarantine facilities. They weren't set up. We didn't have enough laboratories to test the results once we found enough Q-tips to take the samples. There was no contemplation of how you regulate the borders and test people coming in to see if they're sick. We're still not, as a nation, testing people to what I believe is a sufficient degree to make sure they're not bringing in variants from other nations. This is now an international complex. We know that COVID came in through the airports. We need a testing mechanism that's run by the federal government that protects our borders. And citizens have to be better prepared. I, as a person, have to be better prepared. You, as an individual, have to be better prepared. New Yorkers have to be better prepared to protect themselves and to be in a position to assist others. We have to be better educated and trained as citizens of the state. It can't be that we're watching TV and we're glued to the TV to find out vital information and vital basics to protect ourselves. We should be prepared and have the information and the education so we can protect our own health, our families, and our communities. We are launching a first of its kind in the nation, New York State Citizen Public Health Training Program. What this is a state-of-the-art public health training program for citizens. So they are informed, they are educated, and they are trained for the next one, for the end of COVID and for the next one, whatever that may be. And the time to get that education and training is now. Cornell University has developed a curriculum for citizens to be trained about public health emergencies. It is an 8-session, 16-hour curriculum. 8 hours of what they call self-paced content, where you can go online and do it at your leisure, your pace. 8 hours of interactive sessions, where you hear Cornell professors, SUNY professors, national experts, giving you the most recent, up-to-date, best information to educate yourself. The curriculum, and Cornell has done a fantastic job, talks about COVID-19, preventing COVID-19, but remember, COVID-19 is the third coronavirus we faced. SARS, MERS, COVID, all coronaviruses, all believed to come from bats, all believed to come from wet markets in China, and all similar. So, COVID, but not just COVID, COVID and being prepared for the next one. Health literacy, health priorities, public health for community resilience, public health preparedness, health impacts of emergency events. It will educate you so that you can protect yourself, your family, your community. Part of the course, there will be exams. They have a nicer word for exams. I forget what it is. Assessments. If you pass the assessment, you will get a certified training program completion from Cornell and from the Department of Health that says you have been trained as a citizen public health leader. In the event of another healthcare emergency, this would be a body of people who could volunteer to help in their community. I believe we will ultimately attract thousands of people to do this. Because, first, why wouldn't you want to inform yourself after the hell we just went through? And they would then be across the state and available as a possible volunteer army. The best person to protect you is you, an informed you. It's about information and knowledge. Also, having the information and knowledge I think will go a long way towards reducing the anxiety that people felt now. People felt out of control, isolated and out of control. I don't know what spreads it. I don't know if I can accept a bag of groceries. I don't know if I can touch a doorknob. I don't know if I can go in an elevator with another person. All these questions, when you're dealing with a frightening disease. We've been in a state of emotional trauma, of anxiety and a feeling of loss of control. The information and the knowledge, I think, will help reduce that anxiety and restore a sense of control. If you know what you're dealing with and you know how to deal with it, you will be more comfortable in the situation. And we will be ready for the next time. And we'll have a sense of security about the next time because we'll know what to expect. The time to prepare for a disaster is before it happens. Once the disaster happens, it is too late to do the preparation. We learned that again with COVID. After COVID hit, it was too late to figure out where to get PPE. We had to send planes to China. It was too late to figure out where to manufacture Q-tips and where to get emergency medical staff. The time to prepare is before. Learn that lesson from COVID. This course is totally free. It is a Cornell course. If you had to go to Cornell and pay for this education, it would be very expensive. It's online, it's free, you take an assessment, you get a completion, gives you a sense of knowledge, gives you a sense of control, and puts you in a position to protect yourself and your family and your neighborhood, and God forbid there's another emergency, you could volunteer to help. We're joined by Dr. Lauren Warnick from Cornell University. I can't thank you enough, Doctor. I know this was an unusual request. I believe that we are the first state in the nation to do this. We're going to make the curriculum available to every state because I think educating our citizens about this is going to be vital, because let's be honest, most of COVID was about educating citizens about how to act and how to behave. Wear a mask, right? It was basic public health information. Wash your hands, how it's transmitted. This was all basic public health information that we were imparting to the public. If the public had known these things before, it would have been much easier to deal with this situation, and the anxiety would have been lower. And frankly, there would have been less politics involved because there would have been more knowledge and more science involved. You have been phenomenally cooperative. Cornell University is a great state asset, but you did a great job, a great curriculum. We've had many people.
Next on News Channel 13 live at noon, what you need to know if you have tickets to the NCAA men's hockey regionals at the Times Union Center. Also coming up.
Albany International Airport says passenger traffic is up. Why many travelers say they're more comfortable flying now, coming up.